The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone street as Helena made her way to her little music shop on the corner of Calle de Amor and Avenida de los Sueños. Her feet moved to the rhythm of a tune that had come to her in a dreamlight, airy notes mingling with a deep, soulful harmony. Music flowed through Helena's veins like lifeblood. It was the first language she had learned from her violin prodigy mother and her concert pianist father, filling their tiny apartment with Beethoven and Bach before she could even speak. Now in her early 30s, Helena channeled that passion into her quaint store overflowing with instruments from around the world: guitars, flutes, drums, and her prized possession, a glossy black baby grand piano that took up nearly a quarter of the shop's square footage. She called the store the Music Box and delighted in connecting each customer with the instrument that made their soul sing. As she unlocked the front door, the bells above jingled a cheery welcome. Helena breathed in the scent of rosin and polished wood. This was her haven, her place to compose melodies and unravel the mysteries of the human heart, one note at a time. She never felt more at peace than when counseling a nervous bride and groom on the perfect processional song, or helping an uncertain teen pick out his first guitar. Helena flipped the sign to open and went to tidy the sheet music display, humming that dream song under her breath. The notes ascended and descended like birds taking wing. Closing her eyes, she let the music flow through her, fingers fluttering as if across piano keys. She was so absorbed, she almost didn't hear the bells jingle again, signaling her first customer of the day. A man in his late 30s stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the bright morning light. As Helena blinked to focus, she saw he wore a slightly rumpled brown suit and carried a battered leather briefcase. His dark hair stuck up in the back as if he'd been running anxious fingers through it. But what struck Helena were his eyes, deep brown and sad, as if burdened by some unspoken sorrow. "Welcome to the Music Box," Helena greeted him warmly. "How can I help you find your melody today?" The man hesitated, as if unsure whether to come further into the shop or turn and flee. After a long moment, he stepped inside, letting the door swing shut behind him. I'm not sure," he said, voice hoarse with disuse. "My wife, she used to play the piano. I thought maybe—" He trailed off, clearly fighting some strong emotion. Helena felt her heart go out to him. She had seen that look before, of a person lost and untethered after losing their anchor. Gently, she guided him to the piano bench. "Sometimes, when words fail, music can speak the language of the soul," she said softly. "May I?" At his shaky nod, she slid onto the bench and began to play, letting the notes of her dream song trickle from her fingertips. A lilting melody, light and sweet, flowed into something deeper, richer, shot through with a vein of sorrow. She played the joy and the pain, the sweetness and the ache, a whole life compressed into a few minutes of music. As the final notes faded away, Helena looked up to see tears streaming down the man's face. He made no move to wipe them away. "That was extraordinary," he said thickly. "It sounded like Emma, like her life, somehow." "Tell me about her," Helena encouraged. And so he did. Emma, his vibrant, vivacious wife, who lit up every room she entered, who couldn't carry a tune to save her life, but played the piano with such passion and honesty that it brought people to tears, who made everything, even folding laundry, an adventure, who saw beauty everywhere, even when the chemo stole her hair and carved hollows in her cheeks. She fought so hard, the man Andrew said, never once complained or felt sorry for herself, just squeezed every drop out of the life she had left. "I thought we'd have more time." His voice cracked and Helena reached out to lay a hand on his arm. They sat in silence for a long moment, united in the shared language of grief. "Emma sounds like an extraordinary woman," Helena said. "Thank you for sharing her with me." Andrew scrubbed a hand across his wet cheeks and attempted a watery smile. I need to do something to honor her. I was hoping." Helena understood. "You'd like to donate her piano." At Andrew's nod, she squeezed his arm. "I would be honored to help Emma's music live on. Why don't you bring it by tomorrow? We can have a toast to her memory." The next day, Helena waited with 2 mugs of tea as Andrew and a mover wrestled Emma's upright piano through the shop door. Though scuffed and faded in places, it had clearly been well loved. Helena ran a respectful hand over the keys. "To Emma," she said, raising her mug. "May her music never stop playing." "To Emma," Andrew echoed. They drank the fragrant tea in contemplative silence. "I want you to have this," Andrew said suddenly, pulling a folder from his briefcase. "There's some songs Emma wrote. I don't know if they're any good, but I'm sure they're wonderful," Helena reassured him. "I can't wait to play them. Thank you for trusting me with them." Over the next few weeks, Helena poured over Emma's music. The songs were raw, honest, and heartbreakingly beautiful, written by someone who knew she likely wouldn't have time to refine them. Helena carefully copied them out, note for note, and began to practice. Whenever Andrew came into the shop, Helena would play one of Emma's songs. She watched the tension drain from his shoulders, saw the light slowly return to his eyes. The music was catharsis for both of them. As Helena learned more about Emma, she felt a kinship with this woman she'd never met. Emma had been an elementary school teacher, endlessly patient and encouraging. She'd seen music in math problems and poetry in science. Everywhere beauty and wonder. Helena wished fervently they could have met. And as Helena got to know Andrew, she felt a different kind of spark. He began stopping by the shop more often, sometimes with lunch, sometimes just to talk. They'd sit on the piano bench and trade stories, her of a childhood suffused with music, him of Emma, each tale revealing another facet, another glimpse into the woman who still held his heart. Helena began having a recurring dream. In it, she wandered through her shop, but it had transformed into a shimmering wonderland, draped in skeins of glowing music. Melodies floated through the air, each with their own hue and flavor. And always, in the distance, she could hear someone playing the piano with heartbreaking beauty. Emma. Each morning, Helena would awake with new snippets of music in her head and with a strange, bittersweet ache in her heart. Half-formed lyrics would tease at the edges of her mind. She began weaving them through Emma's songs, adding texture and depth, her own emotions and experiences combining with Emma's. On the anniversary of Emma's death, Andrew didn't come into the shop. Helena closed up early and walked the few blocks to the cemetery, a folder of music clutched to her chest. She found Andrew kneeling by a simple headstone, face tipped up to the sun as if seeking its warmth. Wordlessly, Helena knelt beside him and opened the folder, removing a song written in her careful hand. As Andrew watched, eyes glassy with unshed tears, she began to sing. It was Emma's song, the one she'd written in her final days. But as Helena sang, her own lyrics and melodies twined with Emma's, the two halves of a whole reunited at last. As the final notes faded away, Andrew reached out and gripped Helena's hand. "You found her," he said wonderingly. "You found the parts of her I couldn't reach. The music, it's like she's still here." "She is," Helena said. "She's in every note, every word. In the way you love her still. The music may have faded for a time, but you never stopped hearing her song." Together, they rose and walked hand in hand out of the cemetery, two broken melodies learning to harmonize again. As weeks turned into months, Andrew and Helena grew closer, bound by their shared love of music and the indelible impact Emma had made on both their lives. They took turns adding to Emma's songs, Andrew contributing memories, Helena her own musical interpretations. The more they played together, the more Helena felt something shifting, changing between them. Andrew started bringing her flowers, staying later at the shop in the evenings. She'd make them dinner and they'd talk for hours of everything and nothing. They went for long walks in the park, pointing out interesting cloud shapes and making up stories for the people who passed. In quiet moments, Helena would catch Andrew watching her, an unreadable expression on his face. She knew she was falling for him, falling for this kind, generous man who saw beauty in the world even after experiencing such sorrow. But a part of her held back, unsure if he was ready, if he would ever be ready to open his heart again. One evening, as they worked late on a particularly tricky bridge, Andrew set down his pencil and took Helena's hands in his. Helena, I need to tell you something. These past months, getting to know you, making music with you, it's been unexpected and wonderful. Helena's heart began to race. For me too, Andrew. I never thought I could connect with someone the way I have with you. But that's the thing, Andrew said, brow furrowed. I still love Emma. I will always love Emma. And I'm afraid that loving me would be a betrayal? Helena finished softly. At Andrew's miserable nod, she tipped his chin up to look at her. Andrew, I would never ask you to stop loving Emma. She is part of you, part of your melody. Losing her left a hole, and I don't expect to fill it. All I can do is help you. Help us both write the next movement. One that honors the past but looks to the future with hope instead of grief. Tears slipped down Andrew's cheeks, but he smiled tremulously and cupped Helena's face in his hands. You have the most beautiful heart, he whispered. I don't know what I did to deserve a second chance, but I am so grateful you walked into my life. He kissed her then, and it felt like coming home, like the final notes of a song resolving into a perfect cadence. They cried and laughed and held each other as the stars winked to life outside the shop window. From there, they began planning a memorial concert for Emma. They reached out to her family, her friends, her fellow teachers, all the people whose lives she had touched. The program would feature Helena and Andrew performing Emma's songs, including the ones they had added to and arranged together. Half the proceeds would go to funding music education in underprivileged schools, a cause close to Emma's heart. As they rehearsed, Helena's dreams continued. But now, when she found herself in that shimmering music shop, she could feel the glowing strands of melody coalescing around her, warming her skin like the touch of a friend. And each time, the song Emma played on the piano grew clearer, more insistent, as if willing Helena to join in, to add her own harmonies. The night before the concert, as Helena dozed over the keys after a final marathon rehearsal, she found herself once again in that ephemeral space. But this time, when she approached the piano, Emma was there, smiling at her with such love and understanding that Helena's breath caught in her throat. It's time, Emma said and began to play. And as Helena listened, she realized with a jolt that it was the song from her very first dream, the one she had played that fateful morning Andrew first walked into her shop, the song that had started it all. Emma's hands danced across the keys, and without hesitation, Helena joined in, weaving her melody through Emma's. The music swelled, filling the air with shimmering color and light. It spoke of love and loss, of grief and healing. It was Emma's life and Andrew's sorrow and Helena's hope, all tangled together in an exquisite tapestry of sound. As the song built to a crescendo, Emma turned to Helena, hands never faltering. I led Andrew to you, she said. Your song called to him because it already had pieces of my song woven through it. You've helped him find his music again, Helena, and I will always be grateful. With a final shimmering chord, Emma faded away, but Helena could still feel her presence, a warmth in her chest and a sureness in her hands. She woke with tears on her cheeks and the lingering notes of the dream song in her mind. Quietly, so as not to wake Andrew, she crept over to the piano, opened the lid, and began to write. The next evening, as Helena and Andrew took the stage hand in hand, she could feel Emma there with them, a shining thread forever woven through their song. And as Helena played those first haunting notes, the notes that had started her on this journey, she knew that Emma would never truly be gone. She lived on in Andrew's memories, in their music, in the language of their souls, a melody of two hearts.